it was just a regular evening when I came home. The weight of the long day at work was still fresh, and my tired feet could feel every step as I climbed up to our small apartment on the third floor. The familiar scent of our home greeted me, and for a moment, I hoped for a quiet evening. But that hope was quickly shattered. As soon as I opened the door, I found Mark, my husband, lounging on the old brown couch. He had the remote in one hand and a half-empty beer in the other. The television was blaring some show or another, but Mark's focus shifted to me as soon as I stepped in. "Betty," he started, not even greeting me, "I want a pie tonight." I blinked in surprise. "Mark, I just got back from work and I'm really tired. Can we have it tomorrow instead?" He didn't look happy. "You're home now, aren't you? So make a pie. It's not that hard." I sighed. I remember my mother always said to be understanding and accommodating. But sometimes it felt like it was always me doing the accommodating. Nevertheless, I headed to the kitchen, deciding that making a pie might be the quicker route to peace. The apartment wasn't big, just a single bedroom, a living area combined with a dining space, and a small kitchen. I quickly gathered the ingredients, hoping to finish the pie as soon as possible. As I was rolling out the dough, Mark strolled into the kitchen. "Make sure it's apple, and none of that store-bought crust stuff." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We had store-bought crust, but I knew better than to use it now. I made the pie from scratch, just like he wanted. It took me a good hour to prepare everything. The aroma of the baking pie filled the apartment, and for a moment, everything felt cozy and right. I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, this pie could be the start of a pleasant evening. But when the timer went off and I took the pie out, letting it cool on the counter, my hopes were dashed again. Mark was back in the kitchen, barely waiting for the pie to cool down before taking a big slice. After a few bites, his face contorted in displeasure. Without a word, he picked up the plate and threw the pie slice onto the floor, where it landed with a sad splat. "That was terrible," he spat out. I was stunned. All my efforts, all the care I put into that pie, and this was the reaction I got. Tears filled my eyes, but I tried to hold them back. "What was wrong with it?" I managed to ask. "Everything," he replied curtly. "You should know better." I didn't know what to say. I felt so small, so insignificant. The shattered pie on the floor seemed like a reflection of our relationship, broken and messy. Feeling defeated, I cleaned up the mess, the weight of years of unhappiness pressing down on me. It wasn't just about the pie, it was about everything. The lack of appreciation, the constant demands, the way Mark looked at me or didn't look at me. All of it. That night, I knew I needed a break. I couldn't stay in that apartment. I needed to be with someone who understood, someone who cared. That's why I turned to William, my brother. He had always been my rock. Grabbing my bag and leaving the mess behind, I decided to spend the night at his place. William's home was a cozy two-story building with a small garden in the front. I didn't even have to knock. He must have heard my car because he opened the door before I reached it, his face filled with concern. "Betty?" he started, pulling me into a comforting hug. "What happened?" Tears streamed down my face as I mumbled. "He threw the pie, Will. The pie I made after a long day at work. He just threw it on the floor." William led me inside, settling me on the soft couch in his living room. "Tell me everything," he urged, handing me a cup of hot tea. Sipping the warm drink, I began to recount the events of the evening. As I spoke, memories of the past also surfaced. "It wasn't just tonight, Will. It's been this way for years. I always thought things would change, that he would change. Remember when we first met at Jenna's party? He was so charming then." William nodded. "I remember. But Betty, people can put on a facade for a while, but their true colors always come out." "You know," I continued, "when we first got married, everything was great. We'd go on dates, laugh, talk for hours. But as the years went by, he changed, or maybe I just saw the real him." William's face tightened. "He didn't start off this way?" I shook my head. "No, we'd have our disagreements, but it was never like this. Over the years, he just became more demanding, more critical. I don't know when I started feeling like I was walking on eggshells around him." William sighed deeply. "You know, Mom and Dad had their issues, but Dad never treated Mom this way." "I know," I replied, tears forming again. I thought I could change him, make him see how hurtful he was being. But no matter what I did, it was never good enough. William looked at me seriously. "Betty, love doesn't work that way. You can't change someone who doesn't see a problem in their actions." I looked down, taking another sip of my tea. I remember when Mom and Dad would argue, but Dad would always apologize, always make up for it. Mark never does. There was a pause. Then William said, "Betty, you deserve better. Remember when we were kids? We promised each other we'd always be there. I'm here for you now. You need to think about yourself, your happiness." I nodded, taking in his words. The realization was growing within me. This wasn't the life I envisioned for myself. I deserved respect, love, and care. And it was clear I wasn't going to get that from Mark. "You're right," I finally admitted. "I can't keep living like this. It's time to make a change." William squeezed my hand. "I'll be with you every step of the way." The morning light filtered through the curtains of William's guest room. I stretched, feeling more rested than I had in a long time. The decision to divorce Mark had brought with it a mixture of relief and apprehension. Walking downstairs, I found William already up, making breakfast in the kitchen. "Morning, sis," he greeted with a warm smile. "Good morning," I replied, pulling up a chair at the dining table. He placed a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of me. "You need to eat. Big day today." I nodded, taking a bite. "I'm nervous, Will, but it's the right thing to do." He sat across from me, sipping his coffee. "It's never easy, but remember, you're doing this for yourself, and I'm right here with you." After breakfast, William drove me to the lawyer's office. As we parked, I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the steps ahead. Inside, we were greeted by Mrs. Harris, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes. But as she spoke, her kindness shone through. "Betty, I understand this is a difficult time for you. My job is to guide you through the legal process and make sure your interests are protected," she said. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling grateful for her support. The meeting was long, filled with paperwork and legalities. Mrs. Harris explained everything patiently, ensuring I understood my rights and the process ahead. As the days turned into weeks, life became a whirlwind of appointments, meetings, and paperwork. Mark, to my surprise, remained silent throughout this time. He neither signed the divorce papers nor contested them. He simply seemed to have disappeared. This silence was unsettling. One evening, while sitting with William in his living room, I expressed my concerns. "It's strange, Will. Mark hasn't reacted at all. No calls, no messages, nothing. It's like he's vanished." William looked thoughtful. "It is odd, especially given how he was earlier, but maybe he realized his mistakes and wants to move on." "I hope so," I sighed, though a nagging doubt lingered. Life continued its pace. I started looking for a new place to live. I wanted a fresh start, a home where I could rebuild my life without the shadows of the past. After a few weeks of searching, I found a beautiful house. It was spacious, with large windows letting in plenty of light, a stark contrast to the dim apartment I had shared with Mark. I felt a connection the moment I stepped in. This was my new beginning. William was ecstatic when he saw the place. "It's perfect for you, Betty, a place to call your own." As we toured the house, I shared my plans with him. "I want to paint the walls light blue, maybe have some plants by the windows." He chuckled. "Always the planner. It sounds wonderful." Moving in was a joyous occasion. With the help of William and a few friends, the house quickly started to feel like a home. Every evening, after work, I'd return to my sanctuary, relishing the peace it brought. However, that peace was short-lived. One fateful evening, as I returned home, I found the front door ajar. A chill ran down my spine. Pushing the door open, I stepped in cautiously. The sight that greeted me was unexpected and alarming. There, in the living room, sat Mark. My heart raced as I took in the scene before me. Mark sat at my dining table, his belongings scattered around. A sense of violation washed over me. This was my space, my sanctuary, and he had invaded it. "What are you doing here, Mark?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked up, his face showing a mix of smugness and defiance. "Well, it's our house, isn't it? We're still married, Betty." "But I bought this house after we separated. It has nothing to do with you," I shot back. Mark sneered, leaning back in the chair. "Doesn't matter. As your husband, I have every right to be here." Just then, Anna, my au pair, walked in, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, Betty. He showed me his ID and marriage certificate. He said he had every right to be here. I didn't know what to do." I sighed. "It's okay, Anna. This isn't your fault." Turning my attention back to Mark, I said, "You need to leave, Mark. This is my home, not yours." Mark chuckled. "Think again, sweetheart. I'll be staying here. And if you try to kick me out, I'll make sure to claim half of everything in our divorce." The audacity of his claim left me reeling. I felt trapped, cornered in my own home. But I couldn't let him see my fear. I needed to be strong. "Fine," I said, trying to sound calm. "Stay tonight. But tomorrow, I'm getting a lawyer, and we'll see who has the right to be here." Mark smirked. "Bring it on. I'm not going anywhere." Feeling defeated, I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I needed to think, to come up with a plan. Grabbing my phone, I called William. "Will," I said, tears forming. "He's here, at the house. He says he has a right to it." William's voice was filled with anger and concern. "Stay calm, Betty. I'm on my way. We'll sort this out." Hanging up, I tried to calm my racing heart. Mark's sudden reappearance and bold claims had taken me by surprise. But with William by my side, I felt a glimmer of hope. Within minutes, William arrived. I heard the two of them talking in hushed tones downstairs. The tension in the air was palpable. After what felt like an eternity, William came up to my room. "Betty," he began, his face serious, "there's something you need to know. When we bought this house, I made sure it was in my name. I had a feeling Mark might pull something like this. Legally, he has no claim to this property." A wave of relief washed over me. "Thank you, Will. I don't know what I would do without you." He hugged me. "We're family. We look out for each other." The next morning, armed with the property papers and William's unwavering support, I confronted Mark. Seeing the documents, he realized he had no ground to stand on. His smugness from the night before had disappeared. "This isn't over, Betty," he hissed as he left. Days turned into weeks. With every passing day, the intrusion by Mark felt more like a distant memory, but the threat he posed remained. William and I, however, weren't about to sit idly by. One evening, as we sat in the living room, William looked at me with a seriousness I had seldom seen. "Betty, I've been thinking. We need to be prepared for any moves Mark might make. He's unpredictable." I nodded. "I've been feeling the same. But what can we do?" William paused, taking a deep breath. "I've hired a private detective. I wanted to know what Mark's been up to since the two of you separated." I looked at him in shock. "A private detective? Will, is that necessary?" William sighed. "I just have this gut feeling. I want to make sure we have all our bases covered." I understood William's concerns. His protective nature was one of the things I cherished most about him. "All right," I conceded. "What did the detective find?" William pulled out a folder from his bag. As he spread the photos and documents on the table, my heart sank. The pictures showed Mark with various women. Some looked familiar from our past life. One document caught my eye, a police report filed by a woman against Mark. He did this?" I whispered, disbelief evident in my voice. William nodded gravely. "It appears Mark's activities haven't been on the straight and narrow. This could be our leverage. If he tries to make any more moves against you, we can use this against him." I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal. I can't believe he sunk this low. William put a reassuring hand on mine. "We'll get through this, Betty, together." A few days later, our preparation proved to be fortuitous. A letter arrived from Mark's attorney, making wild claims and threats about taking me to court for supposed shared assets and conjuring up fabricated tales about our life together. Reading the letter, my hands shook. But William, ever the pillar of strength, looked at me and said, "We're ready for this, Betty. We've got evidence. He can't intimidate us." With William's support, we met with Mrs. Harris again. As she read through the letter and went over the evidence we had against Mark, her face remained unreadable. After a long pause, she finally said, "We have a strong case here. Mark's claims are baseless, especially with the evidence we have. We'll counter this. Don't worry." Relief washed over me, but the idea of facing Mark in court was still daunting. William, sensing my anxiety, squeezed my hand. "We've got this. I won't let him hurt you anymore." The countermove was set in motion. Mrs. Harris swiftly drafted a response, highlighting Mark's activities and questioning the credibility of his claims. The ball was now in Mark's court. Every day after that was a game of wait and watch. William and I spent many evenings going over the possibilities, preparing for any scenario. Through it all, William's unwavering support gave me the strength to face each day. It was a rainy Tuesday evening. William and I were watching a movie when the knock echoed through the house. With a look of mutual surprise, I went to open the door. Standing there was a woman, soaked to the bone, her eyes red from crying. "Are you Betty?" she asked, her voice shaky. I nodded cautiously. "Yes, who are you?" She took a deep breath. "My name is Jenna. I was involved with Mark." My heart skipped a beat. "Come in," I said, motioning for her to enter. Once seated, Jenna began her story. "I met Mark a few months ago. At first, he seemed charming, but soon he started showing his true colors. I heard about you, about his past, and I thought I should come and warn you." "Warn me?" I thought. "What could be worse than what I already knew?" Jenna continued, tears streaming down her face. "He became aggressive, possessive. He said things about you, about how you'd ruined his life, and he wanted revenge." William's face darkened. "What kind of revenge?" Jenna hesitated, looking down. "He talked about ruining you financially, said he had friends who could make it happen." The room was silent for a few minutes, the gravity of Jenna's words sinking in. Finally, William broke the silence. "We need to do something about this. We can't let him continue to terrorize people." I nodded in agreement, feeling a newfound determination. We need to expose him, let everyone know who he really is. Over the next few weeks, with Jenna's help, William and I gathered more evidence against Mark. From his financial misdeeds to his numerous affairs, the depth of his deceit became apparent. It wasn't just me he had hurt. There were others, just like Jenna. With everything we had, William suggested we go to the police. It's time he faces the consequences of his actions. Walking into the police station, I felt a mix of fear and hope. Would they believe us? Would they take action? Detective Rogers was assigned to our case. As we laid out our evidence, he listened intently, occasionally asking questions. Finally, after what felt like hours, he spoke. "This is substantial evidence. We'll investigate further, but from what you've shown, it's clear that Mark has been involved in illegal activities." The next few days were a blur. The police acted swiftly, arresting Mark on multiple charges. The news spread, and soon, the monster I had once called my husband was unmasked to the world. Months passed after the revelation. With Mark behind bars, I should have felt safer. And while there was certainly a sense of relief, there was also the constant fear of what Mark's friends might do, those he had often bragged about, who he said would always have his back. One day, as I was returning from work, I noticed something odd. My mail was scattered all over the porch, and the front door looked like someone tried to tamper with it. Panic surged. Could this be one of Mark's allies? I immediately called William. "Will, I think someone tried to break in." "Stay calm," he replied, his voice firm. "I'll be right over." I waited inside my car until William arrived. Surveying the scene, he confirmed my suspicions. "It looks like an attempted break-in. We need to beef up your security." Over the next few days, William and I worked on improving the safety of the house, installing security cameras and an advanced alarm system. One evening, as we were testing the systems, the alarm suddenly blared. Rushing to the monitor, we saw a man skulking around the property. But before he could make any moves, the local police, alerted by the security company, arrived and apprehended him. I felt a rush of gratitude towards William. His foresight had prevented another potential disaster. The next day, Detective Rogers called. "Betty, we've got the intruder in custody. He claims he was sent by Mark, but we're still confirming the details." This confirmed my worst fears. Mark was still trying to control and hurt me, even from jail. Days later, I got a call from Jenna. "Betty, there's something you should know." She hesitated before speaking. "Mark's been reaching out to people from prison. He's been trying to spread lies about you." I gritted my teeth. "Thank you, Jenna. He won't get away with this." That evening, William had an idea. "Betty, we need to turn the tables. We've got evidence, Jenna's testimony, and a lot more. Let's go public." The next week, with the help of William's contacts, we scheduled a press conference. The media turnout was massive, with numerous reporters eager to hear my side of the story. As I stepped up to the podium, my heart pounded. "Hello, everyone. Today, I want to share my story, not just to expose Mark's cruelty, but to give hope to all those who've been in abusive relationships." I detailed everything, from our first meeting to the pie incident, to Jenna's revelations and the attempted break-in. As I spoke, the room was silent, every eye focused on me. When I finished, the questions began. "Do you believe Mark is still a threat?" I replied confidently. "Yes, but I won't let him or anyone else intimidate me any longer." Another reporter asked, "How do you feel about him now?" I paused for a moment. "I pity him. For someone to have so much hate, he must be truly miserable." After the press conference, the support was overwhelming. Messages poured in from all over, many from women sharing their own experiences. It was clear that by speaking out, I had ignited a movement. That evening, as I sat with William, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Thank you, Will. Today, I took back my power." William smiled warmly. "You always had it, Betty. You just needed a little push." The next morning, William dropped by. "Got some news," he said, a glint in his eyes. "Remember the intruder?" I nodded, recalling the fear of that night. How could I forget? "Well," he began, "the court has sentenced him, and with all the evidence stacked against him, he'll be locked up for a long time." Relief washed over me. "That's good to hear." "And there's more," he continued. "Mark's been transferred to a high-security prison. With his recent antics and connections, he won't be coming out anytime soon." I hugged William tightly. "Thank you for everything, for being there when I felt alone." William smiled. "Family sticks together." Weeks turned into months, and life started to regain its rhythm. I reconnected with friends, started a support group for victims of abuse, and even began dating again. On my birthday, I held a small get-together. As I looked around at the faces, William, Jenna, my new friends, and old ones, I realized how far I had come. The wounds of the past were healing, replaced by the joy of new memories. Late into the night, as everyone left, William sat down next to me. "You've done well, Betty." I looked at him, tears glistening. "With a little help from my friends." He chuckled. "Always." Hi, I'm Anna. I've been with Rob for quite a while now. We met in college, got married soon after, and have been together for 15 years. Life with Rob was generally peaceful. We lived in a decent house, had good jobs, and shared a bunch of common interests, but there was always something missing: a child. You see, we tried for years to get pregnant. We visited doctors, tried different treatments, and even considered adoption. But nothing worked. As time went on, the strain of our childless reality began to pull at our once strong bond. Arguments became frequent, and the future started to look a bit gloomy. But then, one day, something changed. It was a regular Wednesday morning. I woke up feeling a little queasy. Thinking it was something I ate, I brushed it off. But then I remembered I had missed my period. Could it be? I quickly rummaged through the bathroom cupboard and found a leftover pregnancy test from years ago. Without wasting a moment, I used it. Waiting for the result felt like the longest 3 minutes of my life. When I finally dared to look, it was positive. My heart raced. We were pregnant. The joy, the excitement, the fear, it all rushed in. I had to tell Rob. He was in the living room, engrossed in some paperwork. Taking a deep breath, I walked up to him, the test still in my hand. "Rob," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm pregnant." He looked up, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Are you sure? I mean, at this age? Is it even safe?" I was taken aback. This wasn't the reaction I was expecting. "I took the test, Rob. It's positive." He sighed. "Anna, you know how hard it's been. And now, at 37, do you know the risks?" I felt a sting of hurt. "I thought you'd be happy," I whispered. "I am. I'm worried about you. About us," he replied, his voice softening a bit. "We've waited so long for this, Rob. We can't let fear dictate our happiness now," I countered. He looked down, avoiding my gaze. "Have you considered, maybe, not going through with it?" I couldn't believe my ears. Terminate the pregnancy? No, Rob. This might be our only chance. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our situation pressing down on both of us. I wanted him to be as overjoyed as I was, but at that moment, all I saw in his eyes was fear and uncertainty. That night, as we lay side by side in bed, I held on to hope. Hope that our child would bring us closer again. Hope that our love was strong enough to overcome any challenge. And above all, hope for the future. The next few months were tough. As days turned into weeks, it became clear that this pregnancy wasn't going to be easy. I was often sick, nauseated, and felt exhausted all the time. But each little kick from inside reminded me why it was all worth it. One day, after feeling particularly weak, I collapsed. Thankfully, Rob was home and immediately rushed me to the hospital. As I lay on the cold hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines, I felt more vulnerable than ever before. "Is she going to be okay?" I heard Rob ask Dr. Mitchell, his voice laced with worry. "She needs rest," Dr. Mitchell replied. "Her body is under a lot of strain due to the pregnancy. It's imperative that she stays relaxed and avoids any stress." That hospital stay was the first of many. Each time I was admitted, I'd watch Rob from the window, pacing back and forth in the hospital corridor, talking on the phone, sometimes even arguing with the billing department. One evening, as I lay in the hospital bed, Rob walked in with a weary look on his face. He looked like he hadn't slept for days. "I met with Dr. Mitchell," he began. "He said we need to consider the possibility of bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy." I nodded slowly. "If it's best for the baby, I'll do it." Rob sat down next to me, holding my hand. "I'm sorry, Anna. I wish I could do more to help." I squeezed his hand. "You're here with me. That's more than enough." However, as the days went by, Rob's visits became less frequent. Sometimes he'd call, other times he'd send a text saying he was caught up with work. But the distance between us seemed to be growing. During one of my longer hospital stays, I was feeling particularly low. Missing the comfort of my home, I asked a nurse if I could use the phone to call Rob. "It's been 3 days," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice when he answered. "You haven't visited." "I know, Anna. It's hard for me. Seeing you like this," he admitted. "Rob, I need you, now more than ever." Silence. "I'll try to come by tomorrow," he finally said, his voice distant. But tomorrow turned into the day after, and soon a week had passed. Feeling isolated and alone, I confided in my nurse, Lisa. "He's probably just scared," she suggested, trying to be comforting. Sometimes, when people can't handle situations, they distance themselves. One morning, after a particularly difficult night, Dr. Mitchell came into my room. "I think it's time we discuss the birth plan, Anna," he began cautiously. "There are some decisions to be made." Rob, despite his absences, was there for that discussion. We sat, hand in hand, listening to our options, praying for the strength to make the right choices. Days turned into weeks, and as the date approached, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. But I held on to hope, believing that once our child arrived, everything would fall into place. Little did I know, the hardest part of our journey was yet to come. The first moments of holding my daughter, Emma, in my arms were moments of pure bliss. Her tiny fingers, her soft cooing sounds, it felt like a dream. But that dream was quickly shattered by Dr. Mitchell's grim announcement. "Anna, Rob, he began with a heavy sigh. "There are some concerns regarding Emma's health. We've observed some abnormalities that suggest she might have a severe condition." Rob's face paled. "What are you talking about?" "We'll need to run more tests to be certain, but it's important you're both prepared," Dr. Mitchell replied, his voice gentle but firm. That evening, as I cradled Emma, Rob walked into the room, a storm brewing in his eyes. He looked at me, then at Emma, and took a deep breath. "Anna," he started, his voice shaking. "How could you? Giving birth at this age? We knew the risks." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Rob, I thought we wanted this. I thought we wanted a family." He was nearly shouting now. "You should have considered an abortion. Why bring a child into the world with so many complications? Because of your selfishness, we now have a possibly sick child to look after." I was shocked. "Rob, she's our daughter. We should be together in this, not pointing fingers." His face was red with anger. "I can't believe I'm in this situation. I can't raise a child with potential disabilities. It's not the life I imagined." As the weight of his words sank in, a cold dread filled my heart. "So, what are you saying?" Rob hesitated for a moment. "I don't think I can do this. I can't be here, not like this." It felt like the floor had been pulled from beneath me. "You're abandoning your daughter because she might be different?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I just can't handle it, Anna." Devastation turned into determination. "Fine. If you're leaving, then leave for good. But you'll have no claim over Emma." He didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving me with our newborn daughter, grappling with the uncertainty of our future. ****. The first few weeks after Rob left were the hardest. The house felt empty, the silence was deafening, and the reality of being a single mother weighed heavily on me. But every time I looked into Emma's big, innocent eyes, I felt a surge of determination. I was going to make sure she had the best life possible, no matter what it took. My sister Linda was a godsend during this time. She came over often, helping with household chores and looking after Emma so I could rest. One evening, as I was feeding Emma, Linda walked in, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Anna," she began gently, "you need to think about the future. Have you considered finding a place of your own?" I sighed, looking around the home that held so many memories. "I've thought about it, but the thought of leaving this place, it's just hard." Linda took my hand. "I know, but think about Emma. This house will always remind you of Rob and everything that happened. You both deserve a fresh start." She was right. I needed to let go of the past and focus on building a new life for Emma and me. The search for a new place wasn't easy. With my limited savings and no job, options were limited. But then, one day, Linda called me excitedly. "Anna, you won't believe what I found. There's a small house for rent in my neighborhood. It's perfect for you and Emma." I went to see the house the very next day. It was a cozy 2-bedroom place with a small garden in the back. The landlord, Mrs. Peterson, was a kind, elderly lady who lived next door. "Linda speaks very highly of you," Mrs. Peterson said, smiling warmly. "The place is yours if you want it." I felt tears of gratitude welling up. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. This means so much to me." Moving in was hectic, but with Linda's help, we managed. As I set up Emma's room, filling it with toys and her tiny clothes, a sense of peace washed over me. This was our home, our sanctuary. Linda popped her head into the room. "How's it going in here?" I smiled, hugging Emma close. "It's perfect. I can't thank you enough." She hugged us both. "That's what family is for. You're not alone in this, Anna. Remember that." Days turned into weeks, and life began to settle into a new routine. Morning walks with Emma, visits to the local park, and coffee dates with Linda became our new normal. One day, as Emma and I were playing in the garden, Mrs. Peterson walked over, holding a tray of freshly baked cookies. "Thought you two could use a treat," she said, smiling. I smiled back, taking a cookie. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. It's delicious." She chuckled. "Call me Ellie. Feels strange being called Mrs. Peterson by my new neighbor." We chatted as Emma giggled and played. Ellie shared stories of her own children, offering advice and wisdom. I felt a connection, a sense of community that had been missing for so long. As the days went by, the pain of the past began to fade. With the support of my sister and new friends like Ellie, I realized that while one chapter of my life had closed, another, even more beautiful one, was just beginning. Emma's first birthday was just around the corner, and I was deep in preparations. Ellie and Linda offered their assistance, suggesting ideas for decorations and games. As the day drew nearer, I found myself reflecting on the whirlwind of the past year. My baby girl, Emma, was blossoming into a bubbly, inquisitive child, her laughter a constant source of joy. One afternoon, as I was laying Emma down for her nap, the phone rang. The sound was sharp and unexpected. "Hello?" "Hello, Anna," came the familiar voice. It was Dr. Mitchell. I felt a twinge of anxiety. "Dr. Mitchell, is there a problem?" He hesitated, which only deepened my concern. "Anna, I need you to come to the hospital. There's something about Emma we need to discuss." I felt my heart in my throat. "Is she okay?" His voice was thick with regret. "Please come in. We need to talk face to face." Linda agreed to watch Emma while I rushed to the hospital. The drive felt much longer than it was, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Dr. Mitchell greeted me in his office, his usually calm face lined with worry. "Anna, I'm so sorry to call you in this way." My patience was thinning. "What's going on?" Taking a deep breath, he began. "There's been a grave error. The initial tests we ran on Emma after her birth got mixed up with another baby's." My confusion grew. "Meaning?" He met my gaze, his eyes filled with regret. "Emma is healthy, Anna. She doesn't have any medical condition. I can't express how deeply sorry I am." The weight of his words hit me hard. "You mean to tell me I've lived this past year under false assumptions? My life turned upside down because of this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes, and it's my responsibility. I can't begin to fathom the pain this has caused." I thought of Rob, of the bitterness and the pain. This mistake, it's shattered my life. Dr. Mitchell looked defeated. "I know words can't change the past, but I'll do everything I can to make it right." I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I need time to process this. Driving home, a mix of relief and fury consumed me. Yet, seeing Emma's joyful face as I walked in grounded me. She was my world, and she was okay. That night, Linda and I sat down, and I relayed everything. She was horrified. "Anna, what are you going to do?" I looked at Emma, peacefully sleeping. "For now, nothing. And I don't want Rob to know. He made his choice." Linda squeezed my hand. "You're strong, Anna. Remember, you're not alone in this." In the stillness of the night, I reflected on our journey. Yes, the revelation about Emma's health was bittersweet. But one thing was for sure. I would protect and cherish her, regardless of the past. The swift passage of time amazed me. Before I knew it, Emma was already 5 and gearing up for her first day of school. My feelings were a whirlwind of pride, hope, and the natural apprehension of a mother. At breakfast, a few days before school, Emma gazed at me, her eyes shimmering with anticipation. "Mom, will I be going to school like other kids?" I smiled warmly. "Yes, sweetie. In just a few days, you'll be starting." Her face lit up. "Will I find friends there? Will they like me?" Touched by her innocence, I assured her, "Emma, you're such a lovely girl. Of course, they'll adore you." On her first day, dressed in her new school uniform with a pink backpack hanging from her shoulders, Emma paused at the school gates. With a quiver in her voice, she admitted, "Mommy, I'm scared no one will talk to me." I crouched to her eye level. "Honey, always remember to be yourself. You're amazing, and they'll see that. Just give it some time." Her small hand waved goodbye as she joined the bustling crowd of students. I watched her until she was out of sight, my heart heavy with the typical worries of a parent. A few weeks later, Emma was all excitement and stories about her new friend Sophia. Their adventures during breaks, their shared love for painting, and their little secrets. One day, she bounced home asking, "Mom, can Sophia come over tomorrow?" Delighted at her blossoming friendship, I agreed. Absolutely. I'm eager to meet your new buddy. The next afternoon was filled with their giggles and playful shouts. From the corner of my eye, I noticed their genuine bond and thought of how childhood friendships were so pure and uncomplicated. As the sun dipped, a car pulled up. Emma, holding Sophia's hand, led her to the door. To my shock, standing there were Rob and a young woman, presumably his new wife. Emma, inside. Now. Rob's voice was curt. Sophia, sensing the tension, looked worriedly between her parents and me. Daddy, I had so much fun. Emma's my best friend. Rob's gaze was cold. Sophia, we've talked about this. You shouldn't play with ... inferior children. His voice dripped with disdain, making it clear whom he referred to. I felt a rush of anger. Before I could retort, the young woman, probably trying to mediate, gently tugged at Sophia's hand. Come, dear, let's go home. Emma stood close to me, her eyes filled with confusion and hurt. As the car drove away, she whispered, Mom, why did he say that? Holding her close, I replied, Sometimes, sweetie, people don't say the nicest things, but always remember, you're wonderful just the way you are. That evening, as I tucked Emma in, I promised myself that no matter what, I'd always protect her from the cruel judgments of the world. Only days after the incident, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered, Hello? A woman's voice, soft yet firm, responded. Hi, this is Emily, Sophia's mother. Can we talk? Surprised, I replied cautiously. Of course. What's on your mind? She hesitated. I'd rather discuss this face to face. Can we meet tomorrow? There's a cafe around the corner from your house. After a moment, I agreed. All right, see you at 10 a.m.? The next morning, I saw Emily waiting. She looked out of place, her pristine appearance contrasting with the laid-back vibe of the cafe. As I approached, she stood up, offering a polite, if slightly forced, smile. Thank you for coming, she began, her eyes searching mine. After the other day, I couldn't shake off a nagging feeling that there's more to the story than Rob's told me. I took a deep breath. I'm not one to spread tales, but since Sophia is involved, I think you should know. She leaned forward, anticipation evident. Please, tell me everything. Over the next hour, I unfolded our past. How Rob and I had struggled with fertility, my unexpected pregnancy, his disinterest, the misdiagnosis, his leaving, and my subsequent journey with Emma. I made sure to be factual, not letting emotion color the narrative. Emily sat stunned. He never told me any of this. He said you were the one who left him, and he always painted such a rosy picture of your marriage. I shrugged. Sometimes people craft stories to cope, or to hide. She looked defeated. I feel like such a fool. I thought our love was genuine, but now it seems like he was just replacing one life with another. Emily, I started, my tone firm. It's not about him anymore. It's about Sophia and Emma. They've formed a bond. I don't want Emma to suffer because of our past. She nodded. I completely agree. Children shouldn't be dragged into adult disputes. As we parted, I felt a weight lifted. For the first time, I felt like I was truly free from Rob's shadow, having laid our past bare. That evening, as Emma played with her toys, she looked up. Mom, will I see Sophia again? Smiling, I said, Yes, sweetie, you will. And always remember, your past doesn't define your future. You do. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, startling me from my thoughts. Rob's name flashed on the screen, a name I hadn't expected to see in a long time. Hesitating for only a moment, I answered. Anna. Rob's voice was filled with a mix of anger and desperation. Do you have any idea what you've done? I frowned, taken aback. What are you talking about? Emily left me, he spat out bitterly. She filed for divorce, and she's taken everything. I've lost almost everything, Anna, and it's all because she spoke to you. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Rob, you made your choices. I just told her the truth. There was a heavy pause. She also told me about Emma, that she's healthy. You never told me. Why would I? After everything you said, after everything you did, you didn't deserve to know. I retorted. Rob's voice grew softer, almost pleading. Anna, I made a mistake. I realize that now. I want to be there for Emma. I want to be there for you. We can be a family again. I scoffed in disbelief. Now that your life's in shambles, you suddenly want us back? You're unbelievable, Rob. Anna, I know I messed up, but I've changed. Please, give me a chance. I could feel anger rising in me. You walked out on us, Rob. You called our daughter inferior and turned your back. Now that your little fairy tale with Emily has ended, you think you can just waltz back into our lives? Think again. He sounded desperate now. I was wrong, Anna. I see that now. Can't you give me another chance? No, I replied firmly. Emma and I have moved on. We're doing just fine without you, and we don't need or want you in our lives. But Anna... It's over, Rob. Goodbye. I ended the call, my heart racing. I took a deep breath, letting the emotions wash over me. Emma and I had each other, and that was all that mattered. I wouldn't let Rob's selfishness disrupt our peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together.